Okay, it all looks good. So,
Going on there
if,
with streaming and recording.
yep, trying to make the most advantage of all the things that I can together. So yeah, and you are blanking out. Hello, can you hear me? Hey, Imtiaz, are you able to hear me? Because I think you blanked out for some time. Can you hear me clearly? Hello? Hey, Imtiaz, are you able to hear me? Hmm.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
Sorry, the connection
I
kind of
don't
blacked
know.
out here.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but it's okay. It always happens.
Nope,
Something, you're always reliant on technology, and
something.
then when you need it the
Yeah.
most, something or the other happens. But while you're here, let me just set one more thing up, and we should be good to go.
Awesome.
All right. I know there might be a lot of confusion when it comes to biohacking, increasing human performance, looking at the invisible factors that matter in your life. And hey, this is why I started Shift with CJ to provide you with a guided approach to find yourself through all the clutter and provide you with information which is backed by some kind of science. Now, I'm happy that there are so many people around the world who are trying to do the same. So, today on the show, I've got to you a special person. He's a fitness trainer, he's a nutritionist, and he helps people by breaking down actual psychology, fitness, and nutrition strategies, and all that you need to have a lasting transformation in your life. Imtiaz Kabir, welcome to the show.
Thank you, CJ. Thank you for having me on your show today.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, you're joining us from Toronto. How's
That's
the
right,
weather
the
there?
Canadian North. Weather's actually beautiful. We have an early summer this year somehow. We're in the
Okay.
25 degrees Celsius, and we're not used to this kind of weather this early, so we're loving it.
So at this point, what kind of weather are you typically used to? Is it like
We're usually
plus
still,
30s?
we're still, close to 20 maybe at the most.
Hmm.
2016 is in that range, but we've been getting 25 degrees, 30 degrees already, which is usually deeper in July. So looks like we're in for a hot summer, and we love it here because we barely get summer as it is.
I was just about to say that you guys barely get summer because it's one of the most coldest places, isn't it? I think I've been to
Yeah.
Toronto in 2002. Yeah, I went there as a kid because I had some cousins living up there. They migrated now, but yeah, that was the last time I was there. I had a good time. Went to Niagara Falls, and I believe I was in Toronto in a place called Brampton. Am I
Oh
getting that
yeah,
name
yeah,
correctly? Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So, Imtiaz, you've got a fantastic podcast by the name of the Special Strength Podcast, and you've interviewed experts in the field. Why did you decide to start a podcast?
Yeah, so the Special Strength Fitness podcast that came about because, it ties into another story where I kind of stepped away from this industry that I'm in, the health and fitness sector, for a while. So I'll give you the kind of Cliff Notes version of it. Uh, I've been in this industry as a fitness coach, as a nutrition coach for about 15 years or so now. So I've been in here for a long time. I've done a lot of work with good people, and one of the things that I ran into as time progressed was that the visual perception people have of what a good coach is started to change. With the advent of websites, Instagram, YouTube, etc., it became less about what the person can do for you, unfortunately, and more about what they look like. So if someone was to go and look for a coach, one of the first things they would look at is, what does this person look like? Are they shredded all the time? Are they living that good lifestyle, as they say? But that's just a facade, right? Nobody lives that lifestyle 24/7, and if you do, you're sacrificing pretty much the rest of your life to attain that kind of lifestyle. So, come 2018, I was at a point with my business where it was super successful. I was making, uh, you know, more than double the money I was making from my 9 to 5 and my
Mhm.
coaching business, and I thought, it's perfect time to transition full time into it. I was putting the hours in anyway after work, right? Might as well be full time with just the one thing. But a few things, a combination of a few things kind of took me out of it. One, I became a father. I was a young father at the time. Two, just the stress of doing a 9 to 5 and then a full time, essentially fitness career, it was wearing on me. So I wasn't taking care of myself anymore. And number three, which is probably the biggest thing, is like I said, the trend towards just visual credentials, if you will,
Mhm.
became so flagrant in the industry that I'm one of those people. I'm one of the rare people who doesn't want to take their shirt off and show off. That's not in me. That's not my personality. So if somebody else does it, good for them. But I won't do it. So now I'm at a point where the industry is going in one direction, but I don't want to do the same thing everybody else is doing. How do I survive? How do I thrive? So I decided, you know what, I've got to figure this out. I can't just fake it till I make it. So I completely stepped away from the industry in 2018 at the height of my success. 2.5 years later, after watching countless people on Instagram, YouTube, etc., claim to be a coach,
Mhm.
and watching them, butcher the science, butcher the coaching, and completely teach people the wrong things that end up hurting them in the long run, I just couldn't stay away anymore. So I came back, but this time I had a plan. Knowing that I'm not going to be the Instagram guy with a shirt off, I knew that I had to absolutely find a different way to put my message out there. And podcasting was a natural phenomenon for me. I gravitated towards teaching people a lot. I always have. And the podcast was something that I researched. I looked up how to do it right, the way I can within my philosophies, and it took off. I didn't expect the response it got. It's been going really, really well, and I've had some amazing guests on the show with great information for everyone.
Congratulations that you became a father, and congratulations on coming back with a
Thank
strategical
you.
approach where you were able to reach out a lot of people and just deliver the truth, basically. Because at some point, I also think this is a big facade. A lot of people in this region of the world also always look at the aesthetics, and they aren't really looking at the back end or the story of why this person is how they are. Maybe they're just, they don't have a life and they're just like eating salads all day, or probably they're injecting some other things that can
Absolutely. Yeah.
make them look great, but down regulates hormones and makes you feel depressed, sad, lonely, or just makes you feel like an asshole, to be honest, in front of
Oh,
other people.
true. Yeah.
Because you're just looking at you're such an unnatural state of being. And I would like to make it clear that some people get there naturally because their genetics and the way their muscle fibers are just built in. They're naturally ripped, and it doesn't take them a lot of effort to go to the gym and just pack on some muscle or lose some fat or show those abs. And those guys are really cool, but that might be like 10% of the population. And then this is our struggle. And everyone, like, at this point, I also feel like everyone is trying to be an athlete, and people who are
Right.
not really competing, but they're like putting in extra hours, they're spending so much on supplements, and they're just trying to get that top physique. And sometimes that people don't realize, to get to unrealistic results, you have to take unrealistic approaches. And when you take approaches which are very away from nature, and you don't incorporate like a holistic lifestyle inside, you might just, you might just get to that six pack or abs. And I've been there in the past. I've
Yeah.
obsessed over this looking good phenomenon, and I got my body fat up to like 3.5, and I think 4 at a point. But my life was miserable, man. My life was miserable. All I could think about is food, and all I
Yeah.
did was like taking the stairs. So because it didn't come naturally to me. And then, you know, I'm sure you've trained a lot of people and you've given them a lot of advices on like health, performance, fitness, and much more. But then in the end, it is the, how would you call it, like, for a better word, the person or the audience or the community or your client's responsibility to take that advice and incorporate it into their lives. I normally see people get excited when they try a biohack or a supplement or some version of training like the Tabata training in the beginning. And the biggest issue that I find that people have is consistency. And that was one of my observations. I've trained a few people, and that was one of my observations. I've like spoken to a lot of people, given a lot of advice, and this is one of the most common things that I find. You, as a fitness trainer, being in the industry for such a long time, do you have a similar take on things, or do you have a different side of the story?
No, you actually hit on some really amazing points there. So I'll kind of start off with one of them. Like you said, most people want to be an athlete or like a Hollywood star, right? They don't realize, like you said, unnatural results, like getting shredded as a movie star in like 2 months for a role. When you're like say 250 pounds overweight and flubby, and you go 2 months later, you're like 185 pounds shredded to the gills. That's not natural. The big problem is people aren't educated enough about this stuff, right? They just believe what they see. So they see these athletes go through the training and whatever they do behind the doors, and then they see the performance. They don't see the hard work and dedication that goes into it. They see the movie stars. One day Mark Wahlberg looks like he just walked out of a donut shop, and then the next, 2 months later, he's shredded to the gills. They don't
Yeah.
realize. Okay, first of all the movie stars do is focus on their job. So if they need to get shredded for a shape, shredded for a role, they're going to
Mhm.
be putting the time in. Nobody has 8 hours a day, two training sessions. And the average person, they don't.
Mhm.
Second, the extra, I call them the extra special supplements, right? Air quotes. The steroids and all these things. I've coached hundreds of fighters personally, and working with athletes and people who are professionally required to be in a certain kind of shape. You realize the lengths people will go to do that, right? Whether it's taking testosterone, trenbolone, etc. So average normal people who fall for this kind of stuff, they don't realize the work and the chemicals that go into creating those kinds of bodies. Now, when it comes to people, like you said, the number one problem is consistency, right? And I fully agree. I was just speaking with a guest that I recorded an episode with that's going to come out today. And we're focusing on fathers and dads because it's Father's Day coming up. And
Mhm.
we discussed how consistency, even if you were to just walk consistently, you would see results, right? I mean, as a starting point, you would see results. If you do the keto diet consistently, you'll see results. If you do anything consistently, you're gonna see results. But here's the thing: consistency is boring. It's not as sexy as here's a little, one single biohack or one single pill you can take every day and get your dream body, right?
Mhm.
Everybody wants the magical one-click solution, but nobody realizes or wants to realize that hey, it takes time, it takes consistency, and it takes dedicated work.
Completely agree. And what do you think is what are the factors that go in when it comes to consistency? Why do you think people aren't consistent? Is it I mean, one of the things that we hear is people making excuses, but then it all comes down to some kind of like an willpower, if you like. Do you believe in willpower? Because some people think willpower is bullshit. So what's your take on willpower and what it does for us?
Yeah, we definitely have willpower. There's no question we have it. The problem is it's not sustainable long term. So willpower is kind of like, caffeine, right? If somebody drinks coffee, they're going to get a nice energy boost from it, but does it last forever? No, it doesn't. The analogy that I like to use is think of willpower like a matchstick. You light it, it gives you an instant burst of light, heat, energy, right?
Hmm.
But discipline is like a big camp bonfire, right? If you ever go camping, you make the big fires. You've got to chop the wood, you've got to place it all right, you've got to light the match, light that bonfire, and if you've done it correctly and placed the wood where it needs to be, that fire is going to last you the whole night, right?
Hmm.
So that's your willpower versus discipline. And what most people need is discipline, but what they think they need is willpower. Now, I'm a military guy, right? I serve in the military in Canada, and we definitely use our willpower in moments when we need to. But even us, who are trained to use it in moments that we absolutely need it doesn't last forever. The discipline is what does, right? What you do in training, what you do in everyday life, the habits you set, that's what lasts. So when people start relying on willpower, what they're doing is saying, I'm just going to rely on this thing that's not going to be there forever. It's not consistent, changes with my emotions and the day. So when it fails them, they think there's something wrong with them, right?
Hmm.
They start blaming themselves. They turn inwards. And it's like, no, it's not your fault. You've just relied on the wrong tool to get the job done. Instead, if you push willpower to the side for a second and use discipline as the primary tool that you use, you'd see amazing results. Discipline is simply doing the thing you know you should be doing, whether you want to or not,
Hmm.
right? Like if you
Completely
say
agree.
you need to run, if you say you need to run and you put in, okay, every week I'm going to run twice on Mondays and Fridays. Well, great. It's on your schedule. You've done something to set yourself up for good discipline. Now, when you get to that time on Monday or Friday, then you can use the willpower to help you get that done. But at least you've set up the discipline saying, okay, I'm going to put on my schedule. I'm going to block that time off. If you never do that step, willpower means nothing because willpower changes all the time.
I completely agree. And I love that you mentioned it, that willpower always fluctuates during the day, during emotions, because we know that, I mean, neuroscience has come so far that we know that willpower is also scientifically proven to be limited. It depends on your sleep, it depends on your emotions, it's got a finite number. So if you're listening to this show and you think that you can, like, out muscle willpower, or, like, use willpower to go throughout the day, you might be able to do it first thing in the morning, because when you sleep, your willpower stores, which is technically the anterior cingulate cortex located in your brain, is has enough energy, has some kind of a glucose running. But then as you start making decisions about what are you going to wear tonight, what food are you going to cook, where are you going out for lunch, and things like that, as soon as you constantly put things like that and your brain has to go through an effort to make decisions, that willpower in your ACC starts depleting. And this is why we probably see famous people like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg. They're always wearing the same thing, they have a schedule, they're doing the same thing every day. It is because one of the secrets is because they don't want to lose out on their willpower or their decision making. Another word for it is also decision making fatigue, where you kind of make so many decisions. So if you aren't really sure, if you haven't written it down that you had to work out at like 10 a.m. and then you had to go and eat a steak or eat whatever at like 11 or 12 in the afternoon, and then you're going to do some walking in the evening, if you don't put that down and respect it and follow it, chances are you're depleting your willpower. And then restoring willpower is a completely different thing, that it can be fueled by food, it could be fueled by rest, it could be fueled by how much glucose your brain reuptakes. But again, coming back to the point that willpower is limited, do not put all of your energy on willpower. And then you mentioned discipline. How does a person get disciplined? Because I know for a fact that most of the people listening to this show, most of the people around the world, let's just take a number of people, right? They aren't very disciplined. And does discipline come from something that you were taught as a child? Is there a genetics that play a role? You're a military guy, so you had to go through steps to bring in more discipline into your life. In a way, you didn't have a choice, right? Because when you're training or you're going through the whole thing, you have to be disciplined. You have to wake up at that time. You have to follow the rules. You have to listen to instructions, and that kind of like conditions your mind to be disciplined. Do you think it's easier for people who have gone through a formal experience, like a military experience or something else like that, than compared to
Yes.
your average person?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me answer the first part of the question. Um, are you essentially born with higher discipline than other people? Yeah, some people can have, intrinsic levels of discipline that are higher than other people. That's certainly, you can genetically pass on a lot of these things.
Mhm.
However, discipline is one of those things that you can actually, it's a highly trainable skill. It's an actual skill. It's like anything else. Like pottery is a skill, right? Discipline is a skill. It's highly trainable. That's something that, that's why I love whatever military you look at in the world, right? The way the military trains its soldiers, it's phenomenal. You can learn a lot from it. And one of the main things they do is instill discipline in the soldiers. So in the heat of combat, in the heat of battle, there are no second guessings. You do exactly what you're trained to do because it's life or death for you or somebody else. So how do you foster that discipline? Well, you have to first create the environment, right? That's step one. You go into a military training camp. Do you see a burger joint sitting in the middle of it? No, you
Mhm.
don't. It's all regimented. Everything has a place. Even the way you make your bed is scheduled and told to you, right? And why is that? Why are those exacting standards placed around you? Because when you give yourself an option B, most people take the option B. When you give yourself an out, most people will take the out, the easy way.
Mhm.
And so when you change your environment, and I call it having systems of success and systems of failure. That's how I define it, right? You've got to make sure you have a system that allows you to succeed, removes all the barriers possible, and makes it as easy as possible. And then you've got to have systems of failure because nobody's perfect. Everyone's going to mess up. Everyone's going to have that day where nothing just worked out. So you've got to have a system now to deal with those instances of what I would call failure. And now failure is not a bad thing. It's just a lesson learned. But
Mhm.
to create discipline, you got to create the environment first. So for the listeners right now, if this means that you've got to stop buying those things in the grocery store that you know you shouldn't be eating, and stop buying it. If it's in your house, you're going to eat it. We're all on the seafood diet, which means we see the food and we're going to eat it. It's universal truth. I tell
Yeah,
my wife all the time, like, please don't bring cookies home because I have a thing for sweets, and if all your cookies are home, I'm going to town. It's just going to
hmm
happen.
you're gonna
So,
wake up in the middle
um,
of the night.
absolutely, absolutely. Like, my sweet tooth is going to take over at some point. So, you've got to set the environment up, right? That's part one. Now, part two, you've got to put things onto paper, right? Not digital. And just putting on your Google Calendar doesn't count. You've got to write things down on paper that matter to you, that need to get done. So, for example, when I start training a training block, right? Let's say I want to lose 20 pounds and get shredded or whatnot. Now I've got to schedule in my cardio days. Okay, what day, what specific time of the day am I doing cardio? And I put it in. And I don't just put it in my digital calendar, I write it down and paste it on the wall. I put a sticky note up on my wall. I put it in the bathroom. I put it in the bedroom, wherever I know I'm going to see it the most. Because what we do is, when we start seeing something again and again and again, we condition ourselves to accept it as, oh, it's just got to happen, right? This is going to happen. There's no other alternative. Whereas what most people do is they'll just put it on a Google Calendar or whatnot, which is what I used to do back in the day. And it kind of just goes away in the phone. It just forgets itself, and we go on Instagram instead of the calendar, right? So you've got to make your goals and your action oriented items that you need to be doing a physical reality around you. Again, it comes back to making that environment ready for your success. Once you've done those things, it's so much easier to just do the thing you should be doing because you're surrounded by it all the time. The triggers hit you all the time. And that's one of the big ways you change your habit, right? You've got to place the triggers in place. And when the triggers are there in enough frequency, it almost forces you to change your habits, forces you to change the action you take when the trigger comes to you.
hmm Completely agree. I also think there's more to be said about writing something down, because like when you look at all the best work that's come in the past, whether it be writing, whether it be designing a specific program for like a city or anything, it all comes down when someone starts writing it as opposed to like typing it. And one of the other things that you mentioned, right, and was very interesting, was that every time you write something, there is a specific, and right now I'm blanking out on the name of it, but there is these specific cells in your brain which are responsible for making sure that those things happen. So when you write things down and you see them every day, that part of your brain, and I'll probably just blur the name out when I remember it, that part of your brain actually is designed in a way to make you only see things which are similar to that, or in a better word, like give you strategies to get to that result, because unless you get to that result, your brain or that part of your brain is not going to be at rest. Now, for example, you let's take an example, like if you wanted to buy a car, and let's say you wanted to buy a Jeep, and you've been looking out for Jeeps all day, whether it's online, you're just like looking at things, you're probably listing down what the Jeep features should be. And what happens over a period of time is that every time you're driving on the street, like your brain filters out all other information and it only shows you Jeep. So suddenly, all around the city, everyone has a Jeep. And this is because there are areas of your brain that are related to executing or getting you towards either a goal, a task, or something that you have intentionally put on. So I love the fact that you mentioned that, hey guys, one hack would be to write things down. And we also know from research that when people write their goals down, or when companies write their goals down, they have about a 30 to 40% chance to accomplish it than when they don't write it down. So you could be thinking about all things in your head, and we have the lizard brain and then the monkey brain, which keeps on moving from one thought to the other, and somewhere or the other, if you rely on your memory, you're not going to accomplish it. So that is a very, very good hack. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I also want to add on, like, you made a good point here. Look at all these professional athletes or movie stars or whoever you look up to who are accomplishing things that you think are amazing, right? I'll give an example here. So I follow the sport of mixed martial arts, and
Mhm.
one of the guys that you hear about all the time, and I'm pretty sure everybody has heard this name, is Conor McGregor,
Mhm.
right? Like him, dislike him, you got to agree he's achieved an amazing amount of things in a very short amount of time that nobody else has before. Now, how did he do that? We're lucky because we have video footage of him talking in interviews about this. And there's a very, very famous clip, you guys can look it up on YouTube, where he's driving, I think it's a Bentley or some kind of car in
Mhm.
Las Vegas. And he was talking about how when he was dirt poor, he used to
Yeah.
sorry, that's my baby in the background. When
No
he was
worries.
dirt poor, he used to imagine himself when he was driving his shitty car down the road. He used to imagine himself driving a Bentley. He used to visualize it, right? And it's the same thing. When you make the things that you want a physical reality around you, you're more likely to actually go and get things done and do the things to achieve those goals. So that's why I tell my clients all the time when I take on clients, I say, listen, you need to write down your goal and put it on a sticky note and put it every single place you know you're going to spend time. So in my case, it was in front of my desk, the desk that I sit at to work, to study, to podcast, etc. I have sticky notes still there to this day telling me the things that I need to do on a regular basis. And I've had, even me, someone who coaches people in these things, even me, when I have those days when I'm starting to lose my willpower and things just going south and nothing's working out, I look at those sticky notes and I'm like, man, no, I gotta do this because this is why. This is why I started on that path in the first place. It serves as a great reminder for people. And the second biohack that I can share with you guys about discipline is people make it way too complicated, right? People make things way too complicated. It doesn't have to be. Human biology, human psychology, human physiology, nutritional sciences. These things haven't changed since human beings were around on the planet. And
Mhm.
it's gotten comfortable for us. We've made buildings and streets and cities, but the basic biology and science and psychology really hasn't changed. We just know more. That's all it is. So when I see super complicated programs, super complicated diets, oh, you must have the vegan diet or must be on the keto diet or must be on the XYZ diet to achieve
Mhm.
a goal, or oh, you have to do like 20 different exercises and change it up every week because quote unquote muscle confusion, right? When I see stuff like that, it's like this is why people are failing. This is why it's so important to get proper information out there because none of that is necessary. You could literally walk and do push-ups, and if you do it intelligently enough, at least for half the year, you wouldn't need to do anything else. It's just variations of the same thing. That's an extreme example, but the point is keep it simple. When you complicate things, you're giving yourself an option B, an exit. You're giving yourself an excuse to quit, which most people do, right? They go through the cycle of, oh, I started something super energetic about it, go through it, and 2 weeks later, fall off the wagon and completely quit for 4 months.
Yep, that's true. I've seen that happening many times in my own life and in lives of others. And you brought on so many interesting things, like the part about MMA. I used to be a fan of MMA until a few years ago. I mean, I'm still a fan of it. I just don't follow it anymore. And I remember at that point where Conor McGregor was getting top of his success. I think he was fighting a Brazilian fighter called Jose Aldo. And the way he won that fight, one of the things that they were talking about was that he was visualizing a lot. He was putting a lot of energy, not training. I mean, of course, he was training a lot, but then he would just sit by himself and visualize how the fight would be. He would visualize which punch he would throw. He visualized which punch he would dodge, and he kind of like set up the whole thing in his head like a video game. And comes to the day of the fight, he wins in the first round just because the visualizing thing was really working for him. And when you think of you spoke about how visualization is so great, but it also comes down to quantum biology in a certain way. Now, have you heard about the observer effect?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so the observer effect in quantum biology states that for anything to happen in this universe, in this three-dimensional universe, because everything that's moving is energy, right? It's just atoms floating around, and those different atoms come together, and now you have like structure of whatever. And not to rabbit hole too much into this, but they have shown that every time there is an observer, when there's an intention to observe something, let's say you're observing that one punch coming in, or you're observing your goals or something like that, that frequency of thought is powerful enough to trigger waves into this dimensional universe, and then that waves eventually manifests into something. So the more you think about it consistently, the more you have emotions of it, your body will radiate an electromagnetic field, and that electromagnetic field is information, is waves, is information, and information translates into the atoms in the universe coming together and then getting to a result. Now this is completely off the topic, but I thought it just might be interesting to share it with the audience that thoughts become things. And a lot of people these days are, whether it be the lockdown, post effects of the lockdown, whether it be the scare of the vaccine, whether it be any news media or something that is trying to scare us, every time you have thoughts of anxiety, depression, or you have like thoughts of being negative about a certain outcome, 9 times out of 10 that outcome will be negative, is because you're feeding into that energy status in your mind. And then again, like you said, if you're feeding into something like that, it's the same as writing something down. That thing will manifest. So if you write something down and you focus on it, that positive thing manifests. And if you're telling yourself, hey, I'm not good enough, I don't have my willpower, and I can't lose X amount of pounds, or I can't gain X amount of muscle, then I'm not good enough. And that thought rewires your brain structure. So in the brain, we have neurons, and there is this classic saying that neurons that wire together fire together. So every time you wire these neurons in a specific thought pattern, the bonds between them become more stronger. And every time those bonds become more stronger, it's very easy for you to access that state of mind. And every time you access that state of mind, you access that emotional frequency. Every time you access that emotional frequency, you resonate with that. And Harvard has done studies where they've taken groups of people, and like one study that I remember what they did was a group of people who were asked to do bicep curls for 2 weeks, and then one set of people were just imagining the bicep curls. And in the 2 weeks later, both of the participants had similar muscle movements when one was just imagining and one was actually going to the gym and doing it. So this just shows us that you don't I mean, it all starts with an intention, it all starts with a thought, it all starts with your ability to kind of like go at a certain thing. And I'm glad that you brought in things like discipline, and we really need to know how to hack discipline, because with discipline also comes the choice, right? Whether you're going to eat that food or not, whether you're going to eat that chocolate cake or not, whether you're going to do all of those things. And I think a lot of people fail because they think that they don't have enough discipline to, or willpower or discipline or something like that, to like go to a party or go to a restaurant, and when everyone's ordering dessert, they're like, like, it's very hard that someone would not order it. Every time I've been out, everyone's like, I wanted to diet and I wanted to like not have enough calories, but I saw it and now I can't control myself. So what do you tell people
Well,
like those?
here's the thing. So here's the thing, right? This is part of what I was saying earlier. Is people are so woefully misinformed that they think they sorry, that they think that they can't order that piece of pie or cake at the restaurant with their friends. See, like I was saying earlier, nutritional sciences haven't changed. Like the way nutrition works with your body really hasn't changed. What's changed is human behavior. We've changed as a society to become softer, to have much more ease, and we don't have to work as hard for the things we get. So now what we're seeing is people have wrong information. They think, oh, I must restrict myself from the things I like to eat,
Mhm.
and they're moving less. So what happens? Binge eating, right?
Mhm.
Right? When binge eating does happen, this is when we see people fail in a big way. Now,
Yep.
what people need to realize is you need to find a balance. Everything in life is about balance. If you find a balanced way to have that cake and still maintain a good level of discipline for the most part, you're going to be successful, right? And this is where most people don't realize them going to YouTube or Google and trying to find an answer to their problems or health issues. It's not the way. You've got to work with a coach who's done the work, because until you see different and do different, you don't know different. You think you know, and you can play around with your health, but there's costs associated with it. Most usually, it's in the form of wasted time and wasted results. So, the third biohack, if I could even call it that, is use your body, use your mind, use your fingers to go on Google or wherever you look for these people and find a coach. Find a coach who's worked with other people. They can help you, they can guide you, they can see the things you won't, right?
Mhm.
And that's, I think, one of the biggest takeaways is find a coach to guide you. Don't try to do this on your own if you've never done it before. Now, if you have done it before and you're running into issues now, accept the fact that biology changes, right? We're not static. We're changing all the time. Accept that and try a different approach. The definition of insanity is trying something over and over again. So if something's not working, find a different way to do it. And if you don't have the answer, once again, go find a coach who does.
Completely agree. I'm always advocating for people to raise their hands and ask for help, because most of the times, I mean, sometimes it's ego. Sometimes people think that they might look a bit, I mean, either finding a coach or finding someone who's more experienced than you and who has experience and expertise in a certain field because they have lived that life and they have seen and they have gone wrong most of the times, because coaches aren't perfect. I mean, if you're a health coach or a fitness coach, you've gone and made so many mistakes. Maybe those mistakes sometimes were intentional, like when you were trying to stress test a certain program or a diet, or were you like experimenting with something to write a review. You've gone through like the negative side of things as well, and that what makes you superior than anyone who's just read about it online, because you've lived the life. So I 100% agree. I 100% think that people should invest in their health, invest in their food, invest in guidance that comes from an expert like yourself to help them, or just to carve a path for them, because they have walked on the path many times. And what I think is, a lot of the times, why people start failing in things, and like you said, right? And I remember my friend Bernd from Germany. He's been on a podcast before, and I once did a experiment with restructuring water. So what I did was, I was trying to follow the classic Victor Schomburg funnel of restructuring water and making it exclusion zone. And I did something
Okay.
wrong and I failed bad at it, because I just didn't, I got the technique right, but I didn't get the geometry right. And he once told me at that point that fail is abbreviated for first attempt in learning. So if you fail, I want you to know that it's not like, everyone's going to look down on you. It's just your first attempt in learning. And then,
100% agree with that. Failure is nothing but a lesson, right? If you can make that one shift in your mindset, that's what worth its weight in gold.
and also, you need to keep your ego aside. Like, I think a lot of times people run into problems because they have this massive ego. And when you said that thing, going back to what you were saying, that biology keeps changing. Now, just to give you an example, one of my cousins, he used to have, I mean, he's 43 now, and he used to be a bit fat, like kind of obese. And then he was just like doing a lot of cardio. This was like 10 or 12 years ago. He was doing a lot of cardio. He was restricting his food. And eventually he did eventually he did get onto a the perfect, not the perfect physique, but like he lost a lot of weight, and what he wanted to achieve, he did that. But then over a few years, like 10 years later, he gained the same amount of weight. And now what he tells me, I'm just going to do the same thing that I did 10 years ago. But my comment to that is always that what you did 10 years ago is not going to work, because things have changed. You nearly starved yourself to death, and there are better ways to do it. And your hormones aren't the same. You were like 28 at that time, you're 41 at this time. So a lot of things change in biology, so people must know that. As well as, if I could add, that biochemical individuality is a big thing when it comes to exercise science, sports nutrition, sports performance. So what that means for anyone who's listening is that you are completely different from the person who you've read about or seen on Instagram. What you're eating, the biochemical pathways, the genetic pathways, like, some people are like excellent in like methylation, some people are poor in methylation. Now, these things are out of your control. Some people's stress levels are high, some people's stress levels are low. Some people are able to, they have these elevated fat burning enzymes, and some people don't. So if you just go out there and look at someone and be like, hey, this person has the physique of something that I would love to have, and this circles back to where we started the conversation, you can't just go and copy him. It's not going to work, because your biochemical individuality, where you're living, what kind of foods grow around you, what kind of foods you eat, are completely different than that person on Instagram. So this is why you need to have a coach. You need to have someone who has seen a lot of people and understands what is probably the best thing for you, because you might just put unrealistic goals and unrealistic workouts and unrealistic diets up on your head, because again, this is a part of your ego which says, yeah, I am strong, I'll be able to do it, and I can do it. And then this is why 90% of people, or I would say even 99% of the people who start a diet eventually fail, because either they have very unrealistic goals, and then they're too hard on themselves. And you don't have to be too hard on yourself. It's not that complicated. So yeah. Imtiaz, I think I lost you there. I can't hear you right now. No worries. No, I can't hear you now. Don't know
Okay.
what that is. Yes, I can now.
Okay.
All right, go on.
So I'll give you a little anecdote. One of my nephews asked me last year, "Hey, can you design a little workout program for me?" He's about, he's 18, 19, I think. So he's in that age where he's just coming into young adulthood, and he's kind of
He wants to pack on all the muscles and like go impress the girls. Yeah.
as everybody in that age category does. So I'm a very busy guy, but I said, you know what, let me design. It's family. I always do that for family members. So I took my time and designed everything, nutrition training. He tried it for maybe a couple of weeks, and he said, "Oh, well, I really want to do that program that Michael B. Jordan is doing for Creed. It's on it's on Google." And I said to myself, like, this is completely the same thing I did when I was his age, back when I was just starting to figure things out. Is what you see is so deceptive. Like you said, you're not built the same way as the other person. Your biochemical profile, your muscle insertions, the way they look on you genetically, it's completely different from the other person. Your lifestyle is different, right? Like, for anybody who's been watching this stream or who's going to check out this stream later on, you guys have probably noticed my screen keeps flickering in and out and changing. You probably hear my baby in the background, the Wiggles playing in the background,
Yeah.
right? My life is absolutely not the same as it was 10 years ago. It isn't, right? But the key to it is adaptation. You have to adapt to it and make it work, right? One way or another, I'm making sure I'm staying on this stream because I think we're having a great conversation about some important topics. So coming back to the story about my nephew, I recognize that, you know what? He's a young man. He sees another guy who he wants to look like. I even told him, listen, like, you understand that Michael B. Jordan's got all the time and money in the world to do this. His genetics are completely different than you. And his motivation to train hard and be ridiculously disciplined with his diet is a lot higher than you, because he's getting paid millions of dollars to do that, right? You are recreationally doing it. You can still push, but remember, you've got school, you've got other obligations, jobs, etc. So recognizing that is, I think, one of the first steps. Like, when people get that blinder taken off them and they finally see things for what it is, that's one of those aha moments of transformation that can help a person go from just always repeating the same thing over and over again to actually making measurable progress.
So, talking about like, designing your nephew's program and all other programs, I think a lot of people that are listening to this stream right now will have two burning questions in their hearts. And I think it's about time we like hit the nail on those ones. Now, is there something that you've come across recently, or what is the gold standard way for you to A, build muscle, and B, lose fat? Because most of the people are just, a lot of people aren't really concerned about how fit they are. It's mostly, like you mentioned, people are concerned about the way they look. And this could range from someone who is like 18 years old to all the way up to, let's say, 50-year-old, I would say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what kind of like biohacks or techniques or supplements or what have you discovered that kind of like pushes the dial?
So, okay, I'm going to break it up into three parts here. So, number one, I'll give you a biohack right off the bat. If you guys want to increase your testosterone, or freely available testosterone, do lower body exercises. I know a lot of guys skip lower body day in the gym. We're all about the biceps and the chest and all that, the visual muscles, if you will. But do your lower body exercises. When you train the bigger muscle groups in the body, which is your quads, hamstrings, glutes, etc., you get a much higher output of testosterone in your body. So you definitely want it, because testosterone is going to help you with training, strength, fat loss, etc. It's a really nice compound for men and women, but men in particular are really affected by it. So first and foremost, you've got to address your mindset. Over my 15 years of doing this, I've found that no matter how good your program is, how good your diet is, how good the whole structure of it is, if the person's mindset is still the same as when they started and they never grew here in their mind, forget about it. They're just going to cycle right back to step one at some point, whether it's when they're with you or after you. So you must address the mindset. You have to have your why. Your why needs to mean something to you. Why are you in the gym? Why do you want to get shredded? Why do you want to look good? If it's just to impress girls, that's not gonna, for men, that's not gonna be a good enough thing. For women, if it's, oh, I just want to look like Kim Kardashian or whatever, not good enough, because it
Yeah.
doesn't have a meaning to you. I'll give you an example. When I was younger, right?
Mhm.
I used to train because I wanted to be one of the best athletes I could be, no matter what sport. And I was. I did really well for myself. But when life changed, when I hit my 30s and I got kids and all that, life changed. My motivation changed, but I wasn't acknowledging it because I wasn't ready for the mindset change. I
Mhm.
wasn't ready to let go of, hey, no, no, I'm a top level athlete, etc. Right? So when that changed, it took me a while, but eventually I realized, well, my motivations for working out and staying in shape are different now. So am I going to train the same volume, frequency, and intensity as I did when I was in my 20s? No, I don't need to. I can do way less than that and still get the results I want, because now my goals are be healthy in the long term, enter my 40s, 50s, 60s in better shape than I did in my 30s, so I can have the best life possible with my family and make those memories, right? My whole
Mhm.
motivation is different now. Same thing with my clients. I run, a 12-week transformation program, and one of my recent clients, and I love telling this story. We worked on our why for like 3 weeks in this program. Like, people are like, oh wait, you don't just give us a meal plan off the bat and then workout plan. No, 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 you're gonna start walking off the bat. But we're gonna work on your mindset and your goal setting skills, because again, it's a skill. And because we did that, this client of mine, she's amazing. She literally had a car accident on the afternoon of our meeting, right? We were meeting once a
Mhm.
week. She messaged me, she's like, "Imtiaz, I just had a car accident. Everyone's fine, but my car's totaled." And I'm like, oh my God, it was like an hour before the meeting. I'm like, don't worry about that. Just focus
Yeah.
on, your family or health. She showed up to the meeting. It's like,
Wow.
and nobody else in the meeting knew. The other people in the group didn't know until she told them. But I was thinking, like, that is the difference between setting up your goals properly, where it matters so much to you that even after something like a car accident where you're maybe not 100%, you're still showing up, and that discipline is there because you're doing this program. You're trying to change yourself for a very specific reason that matters, right? So you have to change your mindset. Now, when it comes to physical training, like I said, train lower body, guys. Don't skip it. Lower body training not only helps you with the testosterone release, it's also going to help you get stronger overall, right? When you
Mhm.
strengthen one part of the body, especially the bigger muscles, the rest of the body responds really well to that, right? In people who are injured, for example, if you break your left arm, right, and you can't train for 6 months, if you still train your right arm, as, with as much strength and technique as possible, you'll actually see your recovery is better, and your left arm, you lose less muscle. They've done studies where muscle atrophy is reduced when you're training the side that's still functional. So that's
Mhm.
another big thing, is train the lower body. Don't cause that asymmetrical issue where people are just jacked up top and skinny in the bottom, right? It
Yeah,
doesn't
even
make
for
any
your
sense.
longevity, it's so important because we know that the glutes and all the other muscles in the legs, they are very dense in androgen receptors, and these androgen receptors, once they're stimulated, then you get, we're talking about growth hormone, IGF-1, testosterone, all of these anabolic hormones increase, and then you have a good response because even for women, like even if you're training your lower body, of course, women look much better with their lower body on, but when you train those androgen dense receptors, then the the growth hormone spike or the IGF-1 spike also has a good response in reducing fat. So it's not that if you're just going to train your lower body, you're going to build a lot of muscle, but you might be able to lose a lot of fat, and it's good for, it can increase brain derived neurotropic factor. It can increase all of these other factors, in your brain. You do like a squat set of like even just the most minimum amount of weight, and you'll see your heartbeat increases, so your circulation increases, your amount of oxygen that is going through your cells are increasing. When you do a hard workout, you know that the mitochondrial effects that come from that workout also tend to increase. So love that point, man. Train your lower
I,
body.
Here's the thing. I'm a science guy, right? My background is in human biology. I've studied that in university. I've had 15 years as a coach studying that, upgrading my skills with that. So I'm very well versed in all these little compounds you're talking about and the mechanisms of it. And that's how I used to approach my training like that. My clients saying, I want to be the most scientific guy ever. I
Mhm.
realized, and this was a shock to me. I realized that, yeah, this science is what's the underlying truth, but most people don't like, they don't care.
Yeah.
And,
No, they
and
don't.
it broke my heart. It broke my heart a little bit because I'm like, but wait, like, don't look at the Instagram guy. Listen to the guy who's telling you about IGF and all of this stuff, because
Yeah.
that's what you need to know. But then I asked myself the question, why is that the case? Why is it that people don't care about the actual science? They just want the quick fix. And it keeps circling back to the psychology of it. People just want it now. They want the solution now. So okay, here's a couple more hacks for everybody who wants a solution now. If you guys want to lose weight or burn body fat off of you, you need to fix your energy balance. I don't care if that's by working out, cardio, hiking, whatever your method of, burning calories is and using up calories is. Your energy balance is the number one principle that will dictate if you will lose weight, maintain weight, or gain weight. Now, we'll get to whether that's muscle, fat, etc. But if you are consuming more energy in than you're expanding, you are going to put on weight. It's going to happen. Most commonly, it's in the form of body fat because once we pass a certain threshold, our body says, okay, all this extra stuff, go into the fat cells, store away.
Mhm.
If you eat exactly at maintenance, which is, if you're spending, let's say, 2,000 calories a day from walking, living, breathing, talking, weightlifting, etc., and you eat 2,000 calories in, your body weight is going to stay the same. Your body will generally stay the same. Now, if you mess with your macros a little bit in that situation, if you have a higher protein diet in that case, you will burn some fat. Now, the last scenario is if you eat less calories, if you take in less energy than you spend. Now, you can do this in two ways. You can either spend more energy or you can eat less, right? Or you can kind of do both at the same time moderately. Then you are going to lose weight. Now, how do you lose the weight? Is it fat? Is it muscle? Well, that will depend on the way you're training, your recovery, and the diet, your macronutrients in your diet. What ratio of proteins, carbs, and fats are you consuming? What about your micronutrients? Are you healthy? Because you can do this stuff. You can lose weight on a diet of Twinkies and hamburgers and Oreo cookies if you want. It's been scientifically proven. People have done studies where they've survived on a Twinkie diet, right, and
Mhm.
lost weight. But is it healthy for you, right? Because in the long term, it's not. So number one skill you have to get good at is understanding your individual energy balance. How do you do that? You've got to, for a short period of time, measure what you eat. That's the easiest way to do it. Training, you don't know if you're burning 500 calories a session, 100 or 5,000. It's hard to say because you're not directly measuring the calories burned during a training session. But nutrition is a lot easier to track and a lot more accurate. Is it 100% accurate? Of course not. It's a lot more accurate when you track the things that are going into your body, and then you can adjust your output. You can adjust your exercise frequency, duration, intensity accordingly. And not just that, keep in mind, if you're a very active person, so if you're a mom at home, a stay-at-home mom, and you're running after the kids all day, your NEAT, your non-exercise activity is high, and you're burning off a lot of calories doing that stuff. You have to factor that in. Where most people go wrong, and most diets nowadays go wrong, is as soon as you get a coach who sends you a diet plan, I guarantee you it's like an extreme, like 500 calorie drop from where your maintenance should be. And that's a problem because the moment you start doing drastic things like that, the human body, the number one goal it has is survival. It's a survival machine. It's the best survival machine ever. In the history of this universe, there's nothing that comes close to it. The human body doesn't care whether you want to lose weight, gain muscle. It doesn't give a single care in the world. It wants you to survive. It'll do everything possible to survive. So when you start dropping your calories so hard, so fast, as most diets do, you're going to see that immediate drop in weight, and that's normal. However, after a week or two, your body says, I'm in starvation mode, essentially. I hate the word starvation mode, but it thinks that it's not getting the amount of food it needs to survive. So what it's going to do is slow down all your metabolic processes, and it's going to take all that energy you put in and store it as much as possible into your fat cells.
Mhm.
And it's going to start atrophying your muscles and eating away at the protein to provide some of the missing energy, and also to prevent energy from being burned in the first place, because muscle is an active tissue. You burn calories with muscle. The more muscle you have, the more calories you burn even at rest. So your body is a survival machine. Please remember that. So you need to understand your energy balance. And the best way to do that, the easiest way to do that, I should say, is work with a coach and measure your nutrition, measure what you put in your body. It's way easier to do it this way than to say, oh, I'm just going to run off that extra cake I had. No, it's okay. You had a piece of cake. Just get back on your diet the next meal or the next day. It's okay. We're human beings. We need that release.
And for anyone who's listening, if you think that you can burn that cake off, then make sure you read the label of the cake and then run on a treadmill and see how long
Yeah.
it takes you to burn like 1,000 calories. You will be
Yeah.
surprised. It doesn't come as easy as that. And spot on there. I would just like to add that you mentioned about your body is such an adaptable and survivable mechanism, and this takes me back to some of the things that we learned through evolution. Now, now we have abundance of food, right? Food's as close as our to our fingertips, because you just open up a delivery app like Uber Eats or Deliveroo, and then you just press something, and like 15 minutes later, the food arrives at your doorstep. You don't really have to walk, you don't have to hike, you don't have to hunt for that food. But this is not what was there before the agricultural revolution. So, like, to take a step back, when people would, food wasn't abundant and people had to walk a long time to catch some food, or when there was like natural disasters like ice age, drought, floods, and people were deprived of energy around them, the most intelligent way for your body to survive is convert everything that you have in your body, including muscles, into fat. Why? Because fat can provide long lasting energy. You think about it this way: you have like carbohydrates. Let's say you're if you're depending on carbohydrates and protein for energy. Now, your muscle and your liver combined can only hold on to a certain amount of energy, right? The muscle glycogen and the liver glycogen can hold up to about, let's say, 2000 calories worth of energy. But then you look at your fat, and fat is very dense in energy. Your fat, even if you're like an athlete and you have like 7% body fat, that equates to up to 20,000 calories worth of energy. So it's only smart that every time you replenish your, like, I know that you don't like to use this word starvation, but every time you starve, you're giving your body the same evolutionary signal that there is a famine or there is a drought or a flood and food is scarce. So at this point, every system that's going on in the body must be turned into fat, which you don't want, because like that's counterproductive, because you might be. And to add on to that, Imtiaz, you know what also happens when people go on these extreme diets? They go on to extreme cardio and training sessions as well. So
Yeah.
your hormones are downplaying, your cortisol is elevated, and now you're running, and you're doing the elliptical machine, and you're doing that weight training and the hit cardio and stuff like that. And what does that do? It also sends stress signals to your body. Now you have less energy, you have less recovery, and you have added stress. And that's a disaster when it comes to, losing weight. So thank you for bringing that up. And also, one of the other things that I also I'm a firm believer of is that calories do matter to a certain point, but it is also your macro and micronutrients that matter a lot, because you could be eating like a calorie you could put up someone on a program of like 1800 calories per day or like 2000 calories per day, which we also know like most of the nutritional labels are like give or take 20%, like the margin
The
of error is
20%
about
off. Yeah.
20%. So if you're think about that for a second, and then every time you have things with artificial, let's say, sweeteners, you have pesticides like glyphosate entering your body, or you're eating dinner at like 10 p.m., that also destroys your circadian rhythms and circadian biology in the way your liver, your kidneys, your stomach, everything processes the food. So let's say, like I did this example on myself. I wore a continuous blood glucose monitor for some time. And if I would eat, I was on a ketogenic diet at that time. And if I would eat a fat heavy meal, not much carbohydrates going inside, just some protein and fat and just some vegetables around, my in Dubai, the sun was going down around 6:30 at that time. So if I had something at 6 p.m., my blood glucose would rise up to a certain bit. But if I had that same meal, everything the same at like 7, I say everything the same, but like we can't count for all the variables. And
Right. As much as possible.
it's yeah. The next day at 7:30, which is like an hour after the sun goes down, my blood glucose spike was more than 25%. And we know that when blood glucose increases in your bloodstream and you aren't doing something like taking a postprandial walk or using like a glucose disposal agent to put that blood glucose down again, chances are your insulin levels rising, and what you're combining with that food group, if you're having a lot of carbs and a lot of fat, that insulin will make sure that the fat shuttles into the cell. So I think one of the most important things is timing as well, which a lot of people, especially in my part of the world, so everyone who's listening, I have so many friends who eat dinner at like 10, 11, like sometimes 12. And I think even if you keep your diet in check and your nutrition in check, circadian rhythmicity plays a very huge role on when someone gains weight or loses weight. So yeah, I
Well,
just wanted to bring that up.
that's a great point you make, because here's the thing, people don't, and the timing of your meals. There's studies that came out, I think 2000, yeah, I want to say like 4 to 8 in that time zone, but they were like, yeah, meal timing is super important, super critical. And then there's studies that came out after that. They're like, nah, it doesn't really matter. Like, this is the thing with science, right? That is, the pursuit of truth will always give you conflicting information until we kind of have enough time to
Mhm.
really suss out what's going on, what's the true mechanism behind something. So with meal timing, I think, like you said, it definitely affects your circadian rhythm. So you have to, if you're finding that you can't sleep, and then sleep is one of the cornerstones of health. You can't sleep, look at when you're eating, what you're eating at that times. But meal timing also, like I tell my clients all the time, the number one thing, and this is repetitive and boring to a lot of people, but this is the fundamental science. Get your calorie balance right first. Then, once you've mastered your calorie balance with the foods that's easy for you to consume, easy for you to get, then we're going to look at the quality of your calories, because quality of the macros and the calories matters.
Mhm.
But the first strike, the first angle I always go for is get the calorie balance right. That's number one. Without that, you could be eating the healthiest, quote unquote, healthiest food, all the broccoli and chicken you want. It doesn't matter. If you're overdoing the calories, you're gonna gain weight. Yes, your
Mhm.
health profile is gonna be better, 100%. You're gonna be healthier, but you're gonna be overweight. So are you really making a positive difference in your health? Of course you're not. In the long term, if you're just gaining weight and getting overweight, it's really bad for you. But coming back to meal timing, I tell my clients, after they get their macros in, after they get all that kind of knowledge and put that into practice, then I say, okay, now play around with when you eat. I've done extensive research on myself and with clients with this. I've done a lot of reading on this particular topic, because as an athlete, it's critical. Your meal timing can make or break your performance. It can be the difference between having full 100% energy for the event or thing you're training for, or flatlining when you get there. Even in
Mhm.
the gym, if you guys ever feel tired and lethargic and I just don't want to go to the gym, examine what you ate and when you ate. Right? How
Mhm.
long ago was that? Do you have that blood sugar available to you? Are your muscles and liver saturated with the energy that they need to have, with the fuel they need to have, or are you just kind of running on empty at this time? Right? And if you are running on empty, there's biohacks. There's hacks you can use. Coffee being a great example, right? Um, I use caffeine like in almost exclusively before my workout, 20 minutes before my workout. That's my marker. I'll take a caffeine pill because I just want to clean
Mhm.
caffeine. And I know 20 minutes is my timing, and minute 25, I'm like ready to go. Let's go,
Mhm.
right? My neuronal system, my muscular system, they're all fired up and ready to go. So you've got to adjust biohacks based on a standard, and the standard you set is okay. Eat at a regular interval first. Set up that standard so
Mhm.
your body knows what to expect, and then implement the biohacks, and then you're just 200 timing your results that you can get from this.
Mhm. Do you cycle caffeine?
I do, yeah. So just like with creatine, caffeine as well, I'll do it for maybe a month to 2 months at most. So about 8 weeks, and I'll cycle off of it for like 2 to 4 months. I'm not a big guy in drinking coffee. I use it most specifically to help me in my workouts.
What other supplements do you think make a big difference? Like, do you think things like there's a role for vasodilators like L-arginine, L-citrulline? There's a role for things like, um, yeah, things like that, or beta-alanine, or betaine. What else are you
Oh
using?
man, beta alanine. You took me back to my kickboxing days. I've toyed around with different supplements, all the safe ones, not like steroids or anything. I've never done
Mhm.
that stuff because I don't believe in that at all. Like, I don't believe that you need that kind of help unless you're
Mhm.
like the top 1% in the bodybuilding or athletic world. And then if you do it, I kind of get it. The motivation is high, the output
Mhm.
and the payout is high. But for the normal average person, it's not worth it. It's so bad for you in the long term. But coming back to supplements, whey protein, 100%. If it's
Mhm.
animal source, plant source doesn't really matter, but whey protein, it can definitely help. I'm not saying you should just rely on it. Some people rely on it to get their protein intake. Whenever possible, get your macro and micronutrient intake from whole foods, right? If possible, foods that are grown on the earth, from live animals, etc., right? As close to the ground as possible, I like to call that. But for supplements, whey protein, Creatine. Now, creatine is the most researched supplement in the world. The number of studies done on this thing is by far way more than anything else.
Yep.
And it's been proven conclusively to be one of the best things you can take, even like if you're just a recreational lifter, if you just go to the gym recreationally to stay in shape and healthy. So I cycle in and out of creatine. I'll do it maybe twice a year because I have serious training phases twice a year. The rest of the year is more just recreational and maintenance phases. So creatine, beta alanine. I used to mess with beta alanine before, but the jitters were just not worth it for me anymore. Like you
Yeah,
get
the
that little tingly
tingling.
feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was like, you know what? Like, do I really need that one extra 0.5% in my performance? No. Did I see a performance gain with it? Yeah, a little bit of endurance increase for me, specific to my genetics. But honestly, I stick to as few supplements as possible. A multivitamin is something that I do recommend, especially for someone like me in Canada. You know, we're a winter country, so we get winter 8 months out of the year. That's changing thanks to global warming. Our summers are increasing by a month, so yay, we'll take
yeah,
that. But multivitamin will help fill up some deficiencies. Some of the new ones that I've tried in the last kind of couple of years, vitamin D, right? Even in the summertime, like I'll take usually about 5,000 milligrams, I think, of vitamin D.
yeah.
So
International units. Yeah.
yeah, so five times I use. So I'll do that because what happened with me was for about 5 or 6 years I was very sick. I was getting colds very easily. My body was just not wrecked. And this is around that time when I was super stressed out in 2018 kind of time, right?
Hmm.
With work, with training, with coaching clients, etc. So I realized my cortisol levels were so high, my stress level was so high from other sources in my life that I needed to kind of reset the clock and I needed some help. It wasn't just enough to eat healthy foods, quote unquote. So vitamin D, magnesium, zinc. These three things changed the game for me. Vitamin D in particular just completely changed the game for me. I don't know what was going on with my immune system, but vitamin D just came right in and saved the day. So I still take it to this day. You know, I'll still cycle it, once in a while, but I'll take it almost on a daily basis. So multivitamin, vitamin D, magnesium. If you get cramps a lot, or if you're training in the summer in the heat, you're sweating a lot, it's hard to get the electrolytes in unless you're drinking specific electrolyte drinks. So magnesium supplement will definitely help with that. It definitely helps with that. And zinc for good sleep. Zinc for if you're in a country like Canada, like I am, where there's colds and flus in the winter, zinc helps with that, but also helps you with your sleep. So ZMA, so zinc magnesium compound together, it's something that I've used before. But outside of that, just your fish oils, right? That's pretty
Hmm.
much it. Yeah, I don't stray too much into the citrulline and the L-arginines and leucines. I've done all of that before, but like I said, people tend to complicate things, right?
Hmm.
I did it, so I know. People tend to complicate things because it makes them feel like they're doing something, but really, you've got to go back to the simple stuff. Go back to basics. The basics work. Every coach I know who's worth their salt, every athlete that I personally know who have coached or who have seen work at the highest levels, national levels, even Olympic trial levels, it's the basics. They all do the same boring basics day in and day out. And that's the key. If you can be that disciplined and stick to the basic diet, stick to the basic training protocols, and work on your technical skills, there's no end to how much progress you can make. The moment you overcomplicate it and you start attributing your success to a particular supplement, even whey protein, you're losing, because the moment you stop taking whey for whatever reason, you're traveling or you just forgot to take it today or whatever, you're going to start thinking, oh my god, I'm not at optimal, I'm not at 100%. That's the psychological play that goes on in your head is going to wreck you, because then that leads into, oh well, if I didn't take my whey protein, I might as well skip my workouts today because it's not going to matter, right? So on
Hmm.
and so forth. And this problem becomes magnified when you go into things like steroids and testosterone therapy for people who don't need testosterone therapy, trenbolone and clen, all of these substances that help people get shredded and jacked and big. It damages your body and you don't see the effects till a little bit later on. It wrecks your normal testosterone production and all of that. But also psychologically, it damages you to a point where you think you need that stuff. Nobody needs
Hmm.
that stuff unless you are fighting to be that number one guy in the entire world in bodybuilding, you know, then okay, you go have fun with those things.
Yeah, even when that happens, like most of the people are always trying to do that, and we see a steady decline in health as bodybuilders age because, again, of all these exogenous things that they're taking in, and their hormones are screwed up. And I would say, like, if you're in the top 1%, chances are you're working with a professional, you're working with an
Mm-hmm.
endocrinologist who can guide
Yeah.
you through that process. But again, not taking that hit is much better than fixing it. What about your training program? How does your training look like?
My personal training program or things that I do for my clients, because my training program is very different. now.
Okay. Yeah, you're a father, so it changes
Yeah,
the dial on things. So that's why I don't want to get into your sleep, because I know that babies have this special sensors of waking up whenever their parents are
whenever you're
sleeping.
sleeping. Yep,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
I don't want to get into your sleep, but like on an average, what kind of like are you strength training? Do you go on like a mass building cycle? Do you what's your basic idea about training?
Yeah, absolutely. So training is my first love. It always will be, right? Nutrition is my very second close love. But training, man, like I've been an athlete all my life. In the initial phases of my early life, when I was an athlete and I was doing really well, I never had coaches in the strength field. Nobody coached me in that. I just kind of did the thing people do: go to Google, look up the information, and off you go, right?
Hmm.
But as I got more educated behind the science of it through university, through other courses, through professional training, what I've learned is there's no one mode of training that's right for everybody, right? So if somebody comes to you and tells you, hey, take my program, in 6 weeks, you'll be 60 pounds lighter because my training program is the best. Not the case, man. Like if you really study the science, if you're intelligent enough, you start to realize that the genetics of a person plays a huge role in a huge role. So if I was to say, so CJ, if I told you, hey, CJ, let's get you in a powerlifting program, right? It might take you 8 months to make a measurable change, a specific measurable change. Whereas for someone like me, whose body just loves powerlifting, because I'm
Hmm.
built a certain way, I'm built a little bit, on the bigger end of for my size, a stocky, stronger guy. It might take me 2 months. Right. I discovered that when I actually put myself to different modes. I actually used to so back when internet training and online training became a thing for the first time, I used to wonder, what are these people selling? Because there's one guy, I still remember his name. His name is Manny. I don't know if he's still in the business, but this was many years ago. But he used to sell programs for $25 online,
Hmm.
diet and training. So $25, and he was killing it in the field. I was like, what is going on? What is in his program for $25? That's so cool. So I actually paid for it. I do this all the time. I pay for other people's program just to see what
Hmm.
they're doing.
Yep.
And this guy's program was literally, I still have the notebook where I wrote it down. His diet was, the typical chicken, tilapia, broccoli, the bodybuilder
Yeah.
diet, the really
The
unhealthy
boring
for you
ones.
on the
Yeah.
long term. Yeah. And his training program, this is where I really understood that, people don't know what they're talking about. Just because they look like an expert or have a shredded body doesn't mean jack. His training program is about each training day, and there was about 4 training days in a week. It's 20 exercises. So let's say you
Hmm.
walk into the gym on a Monday. That's 20 exercises on average. Each
What?
exercise you're doing, yeah, like I couldn't believe it, and I actually tried it. I'm like, okay, don't knock it till you try it.
Yeah.
20 exercises. So he's aiming for, i.e., muscle confusion, that quote unquote muscle confusion term.
All right.
20 exercises. Each exercise is about 12 reps to 16 reps, depending on exercise. The higher reps were for more of the core exercises,
Hmm.
and they were doing about 6 to 8 sets of each exercise of that.
No way.
So, I mean, for anybody who doesn't understand what the science behind this is overtraining to the max. Like you're pushing your body so far, you're at risk of developing rhabdomyosis, which is your body breaking down your muscles and those byproducts entering your bloodstream, which is actually
Yeah.
toxic for you.
Uncle
People die
Rabdo.
from that. Uncle Rhabdo, right? So I actually tried that thing, and by day three, I could barely move. And here's the thing: a coach like him was selling people on that feeling of, oh, you feel sore, oh, you sweat a lot when you work out. But feeling sore and sweating are not the hallmarks of a good exercise program. It's your progress. If you can come into the next session or 2 sessions from now and lift more or lift with better quality, or you just get stronger overall, that's the marker that your program is a good program. Anybody can make anybody sore. If I give a monkey a pen and tell him to make some scratches on a piece of paper and gives him 10 scratches, I can take that and say, yep, today we're doing 10 reps. If I give an
Hmm.
elephant the same pen, he makes three. Okay, we're doing 3 reps today. Anybody can do that. Anybody can pull a program off of Google and say, yeah, this is the best program. But it's highly individualized. And that's why having a coach is so important. They can see that. For someone like me, I respond very well to powerlifting. Powerlifting, my body soaks it up. I put on muscle. I get ridiculously strong.
Hmm.
Cardio, and believe it or not, I used to be an endurance athlete before. I used to be a cross country runner, a sprinter, all of that
Wow.
stuff.
All right.
I used to compete in that. I hate cardio. My body has hated cardio since I was maybe 25 years old. It just, something changes in my genetics. Something changed, and I could tell right away. Okay, cardio is just not doing it for me. I hate it. It's boring. I fight it psychologically, and my body doesn't respond. But what it does respond to now is powerlifting, right? It used to be sports specific training, more MMA style training, but now it's
Hmm.
powerlifting. And then once powerlifting is done, as I get older, I'm sure it's going to morph more into something else, right? And I've seen the same thing with clients. Some people, based on their body structure, their biomechanics, how tall they are, their limb lengths, the way their physics works when they move their body, they're going to do a lot better with higher volume bodybuilding style training. Or some people will do powerlifting. Some people will do sport-based training, sport-based
Hmm.
movement training. So I no longer prescribe to the idea there's one training that's good for all. Now, how do I train nowadays? Nowadays, my training is all about longevity and mobility. I'm really focusing this year, especially with the lockdown, on mobility, increasing my joint mobility and range. And that's not just flexibility, that's actually actively moving the joints around, the limbs around with strength, with control. Because as you get older, that's one of the things we see. Older people get stiffer, they can't move as well. And that's one of the reasons they fall and hurt themselves so much, because as they lose their sense of balance, their body can no longer catch themselves when they start to fall or trip. So I'm planning already for when I'm 60 and retired and older. I'm planning for
Hmm.
that already.
That's a great
However,
strategy.
yeah, with the lockdown ending, though, I've already spoken with my coaches about this on my podcast. I had my Muay Thai coach on my podcast a few episodes ago, and that itch and that burn to still become a champion and still compete is in me. Once an athlete, always an athlete. So once the lockdowns kind of end and the gyms open up, I cannot wait to go back to some combat training, because martial arts is another love of mine, and I think I still got it in me. So I'm just building my body up now, fixing the injuries, mobility training, and when the gyms open up, it's back to combat training. So it's military and martial arts training for me.
Wow, that sounds exciting. Really, that sounds exciting. And I hope your lockdown gets over fast and you can get to it. Now, you mentioned about like training and how people can get into that 20 exercises and,
Yeah,
push the boundaries, get to overtraining, which
yeah.
brings me to another big, let's say, side of the pyramid, which is recovery. What are your top tips or tricks for recovery? How do you see, like, maybe are you testing HRV in your clients? Do you see, like, what recovery markers are you focused on for yourself, for others? What do you think people who are listening to this show should focus on? Any biohacks around recovery?
Absolutely, yeah. So let me just say this outright. If you're not recovering properly, all that training you do doesn't mean jack. It doesn't mean a thing, because training is educated, directed stress. You're picking that level of stress and the type of stress you're putting your body in. But where you improve and make the gains, so to say, and make a stronger body, a more able body, is when you're recovering. So everybody who's listening to this, prioritize your recovery. When I design my programs for myself or my clients now, the first thing I do is plan the recovery. The first thing I do before I even design the workout programs is say, okay, what days and what frequency is going to be there for the recovery days, because that is
Hmm.
crucial. Now, some of the biohacks that I love to use is, everybody has a Fitbit now. Everybody's got the Aura ring and these things that can measure your heart rate and all these other things. They're not super accurate, right? So don't take them as the gospel, but you can use certain aspects of them to help you understand when you're recovered. And we're very fortunate to have this technology so easily accessible, because now, one of the things I look for is when you wake up, what's your resting heart rate?
Hmm.
Right? Simple. Just look at one metric. What's your resting heart rate? If your resting heart rate is a little bit elevated past, I would say maybe 70%, right? I would say maybe slow down for that day. And that's conservative. But at the same time, we've seen that, professional athletes, when they train and they follow these metrics and we track the metrics, the days when their heart rates are more of manageable, so under 70%
Hmm.
stress, they function better, they perform better, their training sessions go better. But the days when the resting heart rate is above 70%, you do see a decline in performance. You do see a decline in the kinds of work they can do in the gym. And the chance of injury goes up when that
Yeah,
happens.
the potential of
So
injury goes up so much
yeah,
when your heart rate goes up. Completely
yeah.
agree.
So that resting heart rate, it's so easy because you can just leave the Fitbit on or whatever the device is, you just
Yeah.
leave it on you. And when you wake up, you can just check. Most devices have a
Hmm.
function that'll tell you, what's your heart rate when you're sleeping. And you need to track that stuff. These apps for should track it for you. Track it over a long period of time. You might even see some trends like, hey, I tend to get super stressed on a Friday. Why is that? Is it because, some stressful event happens in my life or somebody comes over that I don't really like? Like, we got to find
It's
out
because
what's
of that
causing our
alcohol
stress.
that you have in the night
There you
because it's
go.
the weekend.
So heart rate based training is something that I'm big into now, because it's been proven to actually work and have real world implications. The other thing with recovery is you must do something to recover daily. So this is
Mhm.
something that's sorely lacking, and people need to take this seriously. One of the things I do is foam rolling. Okay, now
Mhm.
foam rolling is not a magical thing. It will not replace a good massage therapist or a good rehab program for massage and all of that stuff. But if you do foam rolling on a regular basis, you're promoting blood flow into parts of your body that are maybe overworked or sore from training or need a little bit more blood flow. You're helping move that fascia around under your skin so that it's not getting the chance to get stiffer and kind of clump together and cause you knots and pains. So a daily recovery habit of rolling a ball under your foot, easing up the tendon there. Foam rolling, that's a big one. I love foam rolling every day if possible, right? When you feel good by doing these things every day, you're going to perform better and
Hmm.
safer. And when you perform better, you get better results out of it. And probably the number one thing for recovery is sleep, right?
Hmm.
That is number one. If you do not have your sleep figured out, and if you're not getting enough rest, and that's different for different people, right? Some people it's 5 hours, some people it's 7 hours. But depending on your lifestyle and what you're trying to achieve here, if you're not sleeping adequately, forget everything else. Prioritize your sleep. Find out what you need to change, what you need to do to sleep better. It's not about sleeping longer, it's sleeping better. See, me, for example, I for many, many years, I wasn't sleeping well, right? I'd wake up and I'd be a zombie for the rest of the day. I was
Hmm.
training, I was a healthy guy, I'm not overweight. So what's going on? And I realized, I went to a sleep clinic to say, okay, let's figure this out. And I realized that unfortunately, it's I guess in my family, I have sleep apnea, which means my breath stops often during nighttime sleep. So when that happens, you're not getting the oxygen in your body and brain, and when you wake up, you're like a zombie. There you go. It makes sense. So the game changer there for me was, okay, now I've diagnosed the problem. Let's fix it. I got a sleep apnea machine, which is a little mask you put over and stays
Hmm.
on when you sleep, and it supplies you with oxygen and air. It just pumps air into your body so you don't close up here. What a game changer! My personality improved, my mood improved, my energy levels like tripled within a week. And I can tell the difference now when I don't use the CPAP machine versus when I do use it. When I don't use it, I wake up, I'm like, today, another day. When I do end up using it, it's like, all right, let's go, let's crush the day. And it's a night and day thing. But what did I change there? All I did was get better quality sleep. Am I sleeping longer? No, I've got 2 kids under 5. Like, come on, that doesn't exist.
That
That
doesn't
concept,
count for you, yeah.
no, that concept's foreign to me. But the quality of my sleep is so much better that everything in my life now is a lot easier for me to do, and I perform better at every aspect of life. And what happens when you sleep? You can talk about the science if you want to share some science with the readers, listeners. Is you go into i.e. recovery mode. That's your major recovery mode. Your growth hormone spikes. Your body says, okay, now we're resting. Let me fix up. Let me get better. Let me get stronger from the stress you put on me in the gym or during the workout. This is when you make the gains. I remember when I was in my 20s and I was at the most shredded, most dragged looking phase of my life back in university. All I did for 3 months after I got my first serious office job, I couldn't go to the gym anymore because it was like, okay, whatever, I don't have time,
Mhm.
is track my nutrition. So I was tracking my macros and calorie cycling and carb cycling. And I made sure I got a decent amount of sleep, so like 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And I would literally wake up, I kid you not, I would wake up every morning and I would be like, I look leaner. I feel leaner. Did I just like burn a bunch of body fat overnight? And
Mhm.
I used to get comments all the time from friends and girls in the university, and they were like, "Oh my god, you look amazing." And I'm like, well, I didn't do anything different. I'm just tracking my food, calorie cycling, and sleeping.
It's
So
a growth
that was
hormone
my
spike.
big, yeah, man. Like that was my big aha moment. Like, oh my god, like sleep is what made the difference. And when I didn't sleep, there were days when I didn't sleep perfectly. I could tell. I woke up and I was like, a little bit softer, a little bit like ah. So sleep is number one for recovery. Get that fixed.
I would also completely agree that it's a good point that sleep is so essential, and it's not only essential for Imtiaz or me or someone who's listening and he's an athlete. Is the most essential thing for human biology, because one other thing that happens when you're sleeping is that, like Imtiaz mentioned, you recover, you have autophagy that goes on, which is a cellular cleanup, and also all throughout the day when you're taking stress, when you're reading something, when you're recording a podcast, there's this garbage material that goes on and clogs your brain. So guess what, when you're sleeping, your brain cell actually shrinks up to 60%, and then there is cerebral spinal fluid that flushes through those brain cells, and this is your way of cleaning all the mess. And now we know from studies that people, dementia and Alzheimer's is such a big thing for older people, but dementia and Alzheimer's don't even start until 4 decades ago. So if you're young and you're not sleeping well, chances are that you have a lot of these protein aggregation in your brain, the garbage, which doesn't get cleared up. So you have tau, beta amyloid plaques, and things like that are in your brain and you can't clear them up. And every time you sleep well, your verbal fluency, your memory, your attention to detail, everything enhances. So I would say sleep is just an overall longevity hack. So thank you for sharing that. And we're coming to the end of the podcast, and my final question for you is: if you had a time machine, and if you could go back, let's say you can go back like 20 years in your life, or maybe when you were 20, what would be that one, or you can give yourself like two or three pieces of advice, knowing all that you know right now, everything that you've learned, everything that you've experienced, everything that your babies have taught you? It doesn't have to be strength related or, fitness related, just in life. What would you go back and tell your younger self? Apart from
Oh,
like
that's a great
buying
question.
Bitcoin, because
But
like
yeah, don't.
all of us
Everybody says
all of
buy
us want to
Bitcoin.
buy Bitcoin.
That's a great question. I love that question. So yeah, I tell myself a few things. Number one would be all those late nights staying up, especially when you're in the youthful prime of your life, if you would, right? In your early 20s to all throughout your 20s. It's just not worth it. Like unless it was something special, like a memory you were creating with somebody, or special hangouts with friends or family, it really isn't worth staying up and binging on Netflix and all that stuff, right? Because you pay a price, right? They've shown conclusively that even an hour of missing sleep in your life, if you miss good quality sleep by an hour, you're going to pay for that over the next day or two, right? It's like dehydration, right? 1% dehydration, you're going to pay for it for the next day or two. You're going to really have to
Yeah.
take your time to recover. So that those sleepless nights really aren't worth it. Sometimes it's not under your control. Like I remember in my teenage years, like hormones going all over the place. I couldn't sleep if I tried unless I played sports 4 hours a day, like hardcore
Mhm.
sports, and then trained and then ran some more. Like that's understandable. But
Mhm.
when you don't have that happening, younger me, get that sleep in. Right? It's
Mhm.
going to serve you very well in the long term. Number two is get rid of toxic relationships.
Mhm.
And it not is not just for your sake, for your sanity, but it has a direct impact on health. Who you are around is who you are going to be. And if the people around you are always stressing you out, guess what, buddy? You're shrinking your lifespan. You're literally shrinking your lifespan being around those people. And you don't need that stress. So get rid of toxic relationships, whether it's in your family, in your friends. It took me many years to do that, to cut some people out of my life. But once I did it, man, oof, big difference.
Your energy level
And
spikes.
everything's better. You look at life through rose-colored glasses at that point, because you realize, oh my God, why was I putting up with all of that
Yeah.
this for such a long time? Number three, and there's a few things I had to tell myself: get a
Go for it.
coach. I succeeded in sports and athletic endeavors across different sports, and I competed at the highest levels possible without having a coach. So innate physical ability and drive and determination. And I spent a lot of time on the courts playing and stuff. So I wanted success and I found it. But I keep thinking, man, imagine what I could do if I had a coach oversee my progression in those years. I wouldn't be surprised if I was a professional athlete at this point, if that's what I did. So if I could go back, or if somebody is on the same path as me, get a coach early. The earlier you do it, the better. When I coach kids now in martial arts or sports or athletics, the younger they start, you see them later in life now, they continue that habit. They continue to excel. So get a coach, right? And the last thing I would probably tell myself is be kind to yourself, right? And across different facets of life, because we tend to beat ourselves up. Oh my God, I'm overweight. Oh my God, I didn't train today. Oh my God, I didn't do this, or I am not this, or whatever, right? You start labeling yourself, and the way you talk to yourself starts to, eat away at you. Be kind to yourself, because as people, we're flawed creatures. We all make mistakes. We all do things that later on we want to change about ourselves. And that's okay. Give yourself permission to be a different person later, because you're not bound just because somebody saw you a certain way to be that person that you were. You can change. You can be different. So this is a message that people who are stuck in one way, who think, yeah, I know what I'm doing with my health. Hey, go talk to a professional, see what they have to say, open up your mind. Maybe you'll learn something. Maybe it'll strike the nerve that needs to be struck for you to make changes in your life, like effective changes. For people who think they know it all, there's coaches in this industry who think they know it all. No, just
Mhm.
just 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 go talk to a professional, some other professionals who excel in other fields, and you'll realize how much more there is to learn and to understand and know. And for people who think that you can just sell your body online and keep deceiving people, I promise you, things are cyclical in life. Everything has its bright sunny day, and then it goes back down to darkness. Everything. Whether you talk about the keto diet, whether you talk about the Arnold Schwarzenegger days of bodybuilding, right? Everything's cyclical in nature and in life. So you may shine today, But I promise you, if you don't grow and become a better coach and start spreading proper information that helps people, very soon, and it's happening now already in the industry, people are going to see through your filters. People already know that on Instagram, you filter pictures, but people also are learning, thanks to TikTok, that you can apply live filters to videos. So, you could look however you want, but sooner or later, the truth comes out. Look at YouTube channels like Shredded Sports Science and Greg Doucette and all these guys, and Alan Robertson, who are putting these guys on blast. Guys like what's not Athlenex, guys like V Shredded, right? These YouTube superstars. They're being put on blast by the industry because we've had enough of these fake pseudoscience people who don't understand the science of it, selling
Yeah.
programs to people just because they look a certain way. And your day is coming. Your days are numbered. So I promise you, don't think you're all that. Go talk to other people. Improve yourself. If you are one of these people who've done, the Instagram thing and the YouTube thing and promoted just based on your body, it's okay. You have a following. You did what you did. Now make the change. Because I promise you, if you don't, the reckoning is coming. People are understanding that this is not helpful. And the way the industry is going now, coaching is an unregulated industry. Anybody can come in and say, I'm a coach. No credentials needed, as long as they look the part, right? But the way it's going to get regulated. Across the world, it's going to be regulated like any other profession. And when that happens, all of you who are out there selling your bodies, you don't have a job anymore. You don't have a job. So keep improving
Unless you
yourself. Don't
get
think you're
Yeah, sorry. Unless you get into that habit of being the white, like I think there's a famous quote that said you must have the white belt mentality. And especially this relate to
absolutely.
you in the martial arts because,
Yeah.
you could be great at Muay Thai and you could be great at wrestling and you could be great at Taekwondo. But the moment you step onto the jiu-jitsu field, all
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
greatness is just going to go away. Like you're going to be like,
Yeah.
people are going to toss, turn like, it's, yeah, that's reality. That's how life is. And thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely.
And we've come towards the end of this conversation, and I really, really love talking to you. I appreciate all the work that you've been doing, all the lives you've been touching, all the positive changes that you've made in your whole journey, and the people that you love, and the people that you know are your clients or colleagues or people that you've just like given a tip to, and all the audience. On behalf of all of us, thank you so much for putting in the work. Thank you so much for sticking to who you are originally and not giving your clients like that 20 exercise sets, but giving them the real stuff, man. I really appreciate you for that. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, you do online coaching, right?
I do, yes. So I only take on a handful of clients at any given time because I want to make sure I give them my all that's
Hmm.
possible. I want to give them full attention. So if you guys are interested in the way I talk and the things I do and the way I coach people, and you want to be coached by me, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram at ikabir.fitness, or just look up Imtiaz Kabir. You'll see a picture of me. Something you guys should know about me: if you're searching for me on social media, you're not going to see too many avenues because I'm brutally honest about this. I'm still learning how to leverage and use social media in a way that aligns with my principles, right? Without selling
Hmm.
myself out like other people
Hmm.
do. Um, and that's an area of growth for me. So if you guys go to my Instagram page, it's just snippets from my podcast. But I'm gonna grow. I've given myself this entire year to focus on my podcast and really make that my main avenue of information sharing. So if you guys are interested, look up the Special Strength Fitness Podcast. You can search for it on Google. You can find the podcast page or on Facebook. If you guys want to connect with me, just look me up, Imtiaz Kabir, on Facebook, and just send me a friend request or send me a message. I'd love to connect with you guys. And my website's coming up soon. I'm developing that again. I'm taking my time to make sure it's done right within my principles and my values, so that when it is out there, you have the whole authentic version of me and what I provide. So I look forward to that, guys. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Yeah, and I'll make everyone's life easy. I'm going to put all of his details in the show notes. And if you go onto Instagram right now, I have made a post saying that I'm going online with Kabir. So you can find his Instagram for there. There you have it, guys. Again, once again, thank you so much. And this is me, CJ, signing out from Shift with CJ podcast. Everyone, have an energetic day, week, month, year, lifetime ahead of you. All right, now. Bye bye.